So today, um, I've been thinking about really how we approach our practice um, in the way that we view ourselves. So I don't think everybody's like this, but I think a lot of people have that little voice inside of their head that tells them when they're doing well or not. Um, I think that voice in our own head is sometimes not always very positive. I think that, especially when I'm definitely talking about myself, is that when I don't meet my own expectations, the dialogue that runs in my brain is negative on the whole. I just think it is. I think that very often that even when I don't even try to do it, I'm trying to set some goal and I don't meet it, and then I feel badly because I didn't do that, and I usually talk badly to myself. And it's funny because most people do, but I don't think most people realize that they do. I think it's one of the downsides to yoga and to meditation is that it will expose the truth. So when you really do start paying attention to how you're feeling and what the dialogue is going through your mind, sometimes we're surprised at how negative it can become, or that becomes the next evolution. And fortunately, I think this is one of the reasons that Patanjali talks about the 8 limbs of yoga. So the 8 limbs are described in the second chapter of the sutras, and they basically outline what yoga is and what the framework is. And there's 8 limbs, and each side, and 2 of the limbs are called yamas and niyamas. And they're basically the ethical guidelines that we should live our lives by. And one of the big ones that a lot of yogis pull out is called ahimsa, or nonviolence. Some of my more hardcore vegetarian/vegan friends interpret ahimsa to be nonviolence towards all things. And so that's really where some yogis believe that that's where you should stop eating meat, and definitely where the Hindu culture comes in, because they interpret ahimsa inside of the Yoga Sutras as being nonviolence towards all creatures. I think I disagree, although it's hard to disagree with the people who come to those conclusions, because they're very smart people who have been studying much longer than I have. But I interpret ahimsa inside of the Yoga Sutras to be mostly an internal work, just like the rest of the Yoga Sutras are. Very little of the Yoga Sutras are dedicated to the external, including the thoughts. They're really dedicated toward the internal, to making that connection and to getting away from the external. Like, we have to live in an external world, but at the same time, the idea is to be able to move in and out of our daily lives unaffected, unattached. And so for me, I think ahimsa, or I think of ahimsa as how do I deal with myself? And so it really becomes non-violence towards myself, which means non-negative talk. And that's hard, especially if we've built a social framework around good, bad, meeting some goal, some not. So today, I just encourage you to think about ahimsa, to think about nonviolence, and if you have that internal voice that is negative or can be sometimes self-deconstructive instead of lifting you up, if you feel like it's kind of taking you apart, I would invite you to kind of soften around that idea and see if being more kind to yourself doesn't yield a greater result. I'm from the Midwest, and my mom and my mom's side has lots of old sayings that came from Old England, and I think this is one of those things that's very true, is that it's easier to catch a fly with honey than it is with vinegar. And I think it's the same thing, right? Is that I think that if we're going to try to make this practice deeper, I think that it's better to use honey instead of vinegar, to be nice to ourselves, because ultimately we are our thoughts, and if we're constantly degrading ourselves in our own mind, then I think ultimately we're going to be dragging our mind down. I just do. I was talking to one of the students last night who's trying to give up cursing for Lent. And I think that's such a great thing because honestly, a lot of the curse words, and I do this myself, I'm definitely included, are kind of like of a negative, lower vibe. Like if you just cuss to yourself all day long, I think you would feel lower. I just think you would. Try it if you want. But I think also the inverse is true, is that if you're always uplifting, if you're always positive towards yourself, not even talking about the external, just towards yourself, that you're going to see a positive benefit come out of it. And ultimately, I think that's where ahimsa lies, is that as you let go of those negative aspects, if you are truly trying to cause no harm to yourself, then I think you have to let go of the negative talk. And I think, if nothing else, it's worth the exercise. So let's try it. We're going to do just like 15 minutes, mostly because Jason was late from work today. But I'm sorry, I'm still here the best that I can. Yeah. So like all days, let's just find out whatever your comfortable seat is. So for me, I really like a half lotus where I pull one heel into my hip. Feel free to do a regular Sukhasana. Sometimes I really like sitting on my shins and sitting on my heels. It's another great way to find your meditative seat. Ultimately, it doesn't matter what the base is. The ultimate purpose of finding a straight meditative posture, you can even do this sitting in a chair, is to really elongate the spine. So we want to find a nice comfortable base. We want to pull through the crown of the head towards the top, towards the ceiling, and then take the shoulder blades onto the back body, opening the chest. Tops of the hands can come to the tops of the knees, opening the palms towards the ceiling. And then close your mouth and begin breathing in and out of the nose. Maybe you relax the eyes, maybe you close them all together. Nice, deep, full breaths. Not doing anything, not changing the breath, just sitting and breathing to start. Maybe you check into your room, wherever you're sitting. It could be in your office, could be in your car. See if you can just kind of come into an equilibrium with the space around you. Notice any gripping or tension in the physical body. Maybe it's in the thighs. Maybe it's in the glutes and the muscles and the shoulders and the neck. Just see how much effort is necessary to maintain an erect posture, but at the same time, try not to force yourself or strain constantly. See if you can find a gentleness to your practice. Still breathing in and out of the nose. See if you can slowly begin to smooth out the edges of the breath. Maybe doing your best to make the inhale and the exhale the same length. Maybe even count. Exhaling, 2, 3, 4. Inhaling, 2, 3, 4. Inhale. And exhale. And then do whatever rhythm comes natural to you. Maybe it's 3 seconds, maybe it's 10 seconds. Doesn't matter what the duration is. As you continue breathing, just checking in occasionally with your posture, pulling the crown of the head towards the ceiling, wide chest. And now at the same time, see if you can begin to shift your attention away from your thoughts. Maybe you focus on the breath. Maybe you focus on your seat, on your posture. Maybe you have a mantra that you like to repeat. Just settling into your practice of sitting and breathing. of the ways that I like to practice ahimsa in my meditation practice is in the act of noticing. So when I notice that my mind has pulled my ego and I've gotten sucked into one of those chitta vrittis, those thought streams of the mind, and I've gone down the rabbit hole, when I notice that fact and I pull back from that conversation, I always like to smile. To remind myself that it's okay, that is what I've done for the great majority of my life. My mind has thought. I've become engaged in those thoughts and created narratives that sometimes lasted days. So I don't berate myself for falling into this old habit. Instead, I find that I simply smile, being thankful to realize that I've gotten caught up in those chitta vrittis and then come back to the breath. So many of my friends and yogis, my wife, are such giving people, constantly giving themselves to others. Yoga teachers I know, constantly giving everything that they have. But then the simple act of being loving to themselves is lost. They berate themselves with words, with feelings, that they're incomplete, or that they're fatally flawed. Instead of realizing how beautiful they are, how much they offer the world. I know many people that can practice ahimsa all day to the external, but as soon as that third eye turns on themselves, they notice all of the flaws and imperfections. The reality is, of course, is that this was what defines our reality. This is what makes us unique. All of those little things that add up in our mind and our experience does not make us flawed. It just defines the unique experience that is us. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with experience. Still breathing nice and deep, checking in with your posture. The expression of non-violence a lot of times interpreted as compassion from the Buddhist philosophy. And I think that ahimsa can be thought of as compassion towards others, towards ourselves. That nonviolence can be the representative of everything that we're thankful. By recognizing the good in all things, it becomes our focus. A non-violent approach to a situation. And almost all of these same lessons from the external can be applied to the internal. And more importantly, may be applied to the internal. Because what happens on the inside what eventually gets reflected on the outside. So as we foster this idea of ahimsa or nonviolence to the self, to ourselves, eventually we'll find that it starts radiating on the outwards as well. We become nonviolent to all things. Slowly begin to bring your hands to heart center, Anjali Mudra, or sacred prayer. See if you can invite this idea of ahimsa into your daily life as well, not just your meditation practice. The idea of nonviolence towards the self can be infectious, but also important to shift the color from a negative aspect to a more positive. Every opportunity, every breath is an opportunity to learn, to go deeper into the self. And to do so is to go deeper into nonviolence. Being thankful for this space, for each other, for our community. Being thankful for the gift of yoga. Mostly being thankful for yourself, for taking the time to work on you. It's not a selfish act. If we don't take the time to work on ourselves, then we'll have nothing to give others. The light in me honors and appreciates that same light that's in with each of you. Namaste. That's ahimsa.